Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. Today, we are going to do a follow-up on my 5-star predictions video that I posted last year in November. It has been almost a year, and that is a big shame, but I did finally finish the 5 books that I had predicted would be 5 stars, and I'm going to tell you about them now. I only actually have 3 of them here, and we'll talk about why in a minute. 2 of these I have talked about quite a bit on my channel, so I'm going to start with those because I think you could probably guess that they were both 5-star reads for me since they were in my favorites of the year so far this year. That is This Tenderland by William Kent Kruger. I absolutely adored this book. From start to finish, I was captivated by the story of these kids and the different settings that we go on in this book. So this is a book that includes travel. There are 4 children who start their journey together at this home Indian school in Minnesota. And this school is horrifying and abusive and really awful. So we have these 2 brothers and their best friend Moses, and then this other girl joins them. And these 4 need to escape at one point. Something happens that's just terrible, and these 4 get out of Dodge. They hop on a boat and they float down the river. So then we have their journey going down the river, and they experience a couple different things. Each of them kind of has a crucial moment. In particular, Moses, who is the only Native American child in this family, or in this found family. The 2 brothers are white and the little girl is white as well. But there are some really poignant scenes in here, some very moving moments, and heartfelt. I cried. I laughed with them. It's set in the 1930s, so we get to see Hoovervilles, like these slum communities along the river as they go. We learn a little bit about life in America in the 1930s as they're journeying through. So we learn about these Indian schools, which are awful. We learn about Hoovervilles and other slum and poverty-stricken areas during the 1930s. There's a traveling kind of revival preacher woman who has healing gifts, and what that was like. That's a big part of the story as well. I just loved this story. There's a touch of magic in here that for some people really threw them off. Almost like one of the characters has a 6th sense type of thing. They can kind of see what's going to happen slightly. And some people didn't really like that aspect of it. I did. I liked that aspect of this book. I thought it gave it just this additional little level of enjoyment for me. I absolutely loved this book. I cannot wait to read more from William Kent Kruger. I think the writing was beautiful. The characters were so well drawn out, and I learned something, and I cared so much about it. So absolutely a 5-star read. Love, love, love. The other one of this group of 5 books that I absolutely loved, that I've already talked about quite a bit, is Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon. This is an Oregon Trail type book. I am one who grew up playing the Oregon Trail on the computers in the class when I was in 6th grade. I just loved that game. And this is like the Oregon Trail game come to life. So we follow this family, the May family, as they are traveling west. And Naomi May is a teenager. She is a young widow. She had been married a year before, and her husband passes away before the book starts. So she's a young widow traveling with her family west. Also on the wagon train is a half Pawnee, half white man, John Lowry, who is bringing a load of mules out to the fort that's part of their path. John and Naomi have a bond that starts rather quickly. It's not a romance right away. They are actually a little antagonistic towards each other, very standoffish, but they have this bond that grows. Their relationship felt very realistic all the way through. It deals with life on the trail, the difficulties of crossing rivers and getting diseases and dealing with groups of Native Americans along the way. And we get to see John kind of agonize a little bit over his own identity and where does he fit in. We deal with grief and loss and struggle, and it's just so well handled. I thought that this was beautifully written and beautifully handled. in a very respectful way to all parties involved. I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, this book convinced me that Amy Harmon is a new favorite of mine. I've only read 2 of her books, but I've loved both of them. The next book that I'll talk about is the third one that I still own is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This book is set in the 1950s in Tehran, in Iran, I believe, in Iran. And I did not know very much about that part of the world at all. Beautiful cover here. It's a romance between Roya and Bahman, who meet in the stationery shop, owned by Mr. Fakhri. Owned by Mr. Fakhri. And so it's very sweet at the beginning in the midst of a nation that is dealing with some political upheaval. And these two, Roya and Bahman, are supposed to meet at this courtyard or park on this specific time on this specific day, but at that time there are riots and there's miscommunication and they don't meet and their lives go separate ways. And so the sweetness and the joy of this early blooming romance is quickly turned to heartache, and it's pretty devastating the rest of the book. I think the audiobook for this was fantastic. I really did enjoy learning about this part of the world and their story. I did not love how it all ended, and this one got 4 stars for me. I do think it's worth the read for sure, and there were parts that were very beautiful. It was a little on the depressing side of things, which I don't always mind as long as there's a string of hope, and I don't feel like I had that enough of the hope and light that I like to have in a book. But I thought it was a wonderful read and 4 stars. So I'm so glad I read that one. The next book that I'm going to talk about I no longer own, and I just read it actually last month, and that is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I had high hopes for this. This book was super duper hyped when it first came out. So many people were raving about this story of these 2 sisters who grow up in this town where being light-skinned Black is highly valued. They do kind of leave their town, go to New Orleans together, and out of the blue, one of the sisters takes off and their lives are separate from then on out. They don't communicate. They're not in touch with each other. And it's pretty devastating, especially for the sister left behind. She doesn't know what happened. And we do, as the reader, we learn that one of the girls decided to pass as white and never told people in her real life that she was a Black woman and lived her life passing as white. The other sister married a very dark-skinned Black man, had a beautiful young girl who took after her father. She runs away back to their hometown, where she never thought she would end back up at their hometown, but she does. I just felt like this book was overhyped. I felt like it was a little bit disjointed and jumpy. It didn't flow very smoothly for me, and I just really didn't care about the characters. And I don't need the characters to particularly be likable all the time, as long as there's something I can root for and in a way connect with how they're feeling or their emotions. And I don't feel like we really got very deep with either of the 2 sisters. And so it kept me feeling disconnected from them and therefore not caring about them or their story. So I did feel like this one was overhyped. It was interesting to a degree. I did finish it. I never felt like DNFing it. I just got to the end and was like, oh, okay, it was okay. It was good. I finished it. I enjoyed my reading experience, but it didn't blow me away, and it's not one that I'm going to think about. I didn't feel like I cared by the end. So 3 stars, not a 5-star, unfortunately. It is what it is. The final book that was on my 5-star predictions last November was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. And unfortunately, this was a DNF for me. I should have done a little bit more research about this book. It's a gorgeous cover. And again, this is one that was very hyped. And some people that I follow absolutely loved this book. They just loved it. And so I had really high hopes for it. I knew it takes place in the 1940s, I believe, in New York City in the theater world, which I'm so excited about that. I love New York City and I love the theater. And I just thought that would be such a cool backdrop for a coming of age story, which is ultimately what this was. The story is told from Vivian's perspective as an older woman looking back on her life when she was younger, first coming to New York City. I did not care for Vivian at all. She's kind of a no-nonsense, like explore everything, willing to do anything, and that's fine. But ultimately this story was her sexual awakening, and it got really into it with all of her sexual exploits and the sexual exploits of the people around her. And I just don't want to read all that. I just don't care. Because I didn't really care about Vivian herself anyways, and then it got into all of these relatively graphic sex scenes, I just was like, I don't care. I don't want to read this anymore. So I don't remember how far I got. It was a few hours into it. And I also feel like it was super long and not much was going on other than Vivian exploring sexually with multiple people around her. So I DNF'd that one, sadly. Sadly, I did not find the magic in it that a lot of other people did. So that is it. I did decently, I think. The 3 that I'm keeping, I have 2 5 stars that are like new favorites. Absolutely love these 2 books. Really, really enjoyed The Stationery Shop, and I'm keeping that one as well. And then Vanishing Half is already in my unhaul pile out in the car, actually. And City of Girls has been gone for a long time. DNF'd that a while ago. So not too bad, kind of like middle of the road as far as predictions go. I always hope that it's going to be better than that. I will not be doing another one very soon because I'm in the middle of a 5-star predictions that I'm doing with Sarah and Lindsay for Booklist Thursday based on our NetGalley lists. We chose 5 of those that are 5-star predictions, and I gotta tell you, I'm already doing better. I've finished 3 already of that list. I have 2 left to do, so I'm already at a much better pace. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I would love to know if you've read any of my 5-star predictions, if you agreed with me about them, if you haven't read them yet and you're now convinced, or if you have them on your list and you're taking them off. I would love to know that as well, or anything else. You guys know I love talking with you down in the comments. Be sure to chat with me down there. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. And I will be talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.